Mr. President, so did this turn out to not be a witch hunt after all? You think Robert Mueller did
It's lasted a long time. We're glad it's over. It's 100% the way it should have been. I wish it could have gone a lot sooner, a lot quicker. We can never let this happen to another president again. I can tell you that. I say it very strongly. Very few people I know could have handled it. We can never, ever let this happen to another president again.
U.S. President Donald Trump was upbeat today after Attorney General William Barr released a summary Sunday of the long-awaited report on Russian influence in the 2016 presidential election. The verdict, according to Barr, Special Counsel Robert Mueller clears Trump of conspiring with Russia, but stops short of exonerating the president of obstruction of justice. According to the summary, Mueller writes, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. So what does the report tell us about this 2-year-long investigation? And as Democrats start to jockey for position in the upcoming presidential race, will the report have an impact on Trump's chances in 2020? Kenneth Vogel is a Washington correspondent for the New York Times, and he joins us from Washington. Hey, Ken, thanks for being with us.
Pleasure, Vashi.
Okay, so help us understand on this side of the border. So this is a summary, a 4-page summary of the report. Does it exonerate the president?
No, it doesn't, as you just alluded to there, on one of the two key questions, that being whether he obstructed this investigation into Russian interference and the possibility of collusion or coordination with the Russians in the 2016 campaign. It is silent on whether he obstructed that investigation. In fact, it says that there was evidence submitted on both sides of the ledger, both supporting a potential finding of obstruction and opposing it, but that Attorney General Barr, of course, is an appointee of President Trump, determined that he assessed that it would be difficult to build a case and to win a conviction for obstruction, not to mention the fact that he had previously, even before he was Attorney General, weighed in and said that he did not think that a president could obstruct justice during his time in office because the president is essentially the law. Democrats, obviously, are quibbling with that finding, and they want more information from Barr as to how he reached this determination. They also want more information from Mueller. They want the full Mueller report. Barr signaled potentially the sort of parameters of a fight with Democrats over their call for the report in his letter summarizing the report to Congress, saying that he would like to submit more information to Congress and to the public because he's aware of the public interest in it, but there are grand jury rules and criminal procedure rules that would require him and the Justice Department to very carefully, the suggestion was, go through the report to make sure that they weren't releasing any information that should not be public. So we're already seeing sort of the contours of a coming fight over this Mueller report and the findings in the summary.
Is there any indication, though, from Barr about whether he's willing to do that? Is that process underway? Where does that stand?
He suggested that he was willing to do that because, again, he did see the public interest in it, but sort of sounded a cautionary note for people who are more eager to see this more quickly, that it wouldn't necessarily be quick. However, there is some talk about him possibly, before releasing additional pieces of the report, giving a fuller explanation of the determination on obstruction and his decision not to pursue an obstruction case as sort of a preliminary briefing to Congress.
Were you surprised that the original Mueller report, or at least according to what Barr presents, didn't have Mueller arriving at a conclusion one way or the other on obstruction of justice? Wasn't that supposed to be part of the point?
Yeah, I mean, it became part of the point. Of course, this was an investigation originally into Russian interference into the 2016 election, and he brought a number of indictments, and he brought a number of indictments against Russians related to that, and then he brought a number of indictments and actually won guilty pleas and convictions of folks in the Trump orbit that were not necessarily directly related to that core mission. He did hint at various times in various court filings that there was information that got to the heart of this matter. Those enticing breadcrumbs are the ones that have Democrats clamoring for a more fulsome explanation and airing of the finding, not just the actual report itself, but the investigative materials that were gathered for to put together this report. So you can see already this is not going away anytime soon.
You can also see that they're taking aim, a lot of people in the White House and the White House's allies, at the media, sort of accusing the media of overhyping this. I think Sarah Sanders, the White House press secretary, last night tweeted, Democrats and their liberal media allies for 2 years slandered President Donald Trump for conspiring with Russia. It was all a malicious, preposterous lie given wall-to-wall media coverage despite zero evidence. Tell me a bit more about how that's playing out.
Well, certainly I think there is a bit of soul searching. You do see some in the media who are suggesting that the coverage was overwrought, but the coverage of this investigation, and more importantly of the subject matter covered by this investigation, was very much in the public interest and remains in the public interest. And there is, frankly, a countervailing concern among some in the media that there will be less reporting on these matters which remain of public interest and of significance, even as Mueller has determined that there weren't sufficient grounds to prove collusion. It doesn't mean that these interactions with Russians or the way that Donald Trump's foreign policy has been shaped by this investigation and some of the things that it turned up aren't of public interest. In fact, they still are. And so I think we'll expect to see the president nonetheless prosecuting this grievance that the media was out to get him, that this was a witch hunt, and even possibly there have been hints of him or his associates calling for sort of a counter investigation into how this investigation got started, with the suggestion being that there was some bad behavior in the sort of machinery of the Justice Department or law enforcement or the intelligence agencies, a grievance that we have seen him air before, but that he feels perhaps emboldened by these findings to maybe make a staple of his campaign and of his rhetoric going forward.
And let me just ask you about one other piece of probably good news for Donald Trump. Michael Avenatti, who represented porn star Stormy Daniels in her lawsuit against the president, has been charged with fraud, allegedly trying to extort more than $20 million from Nike. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, this guy was a major thorn in the president's side and of Republican side. He, played a significant part in both prompting the release of information that was ultimately proven to be a part of the Michael Cohen investigation into Michael Cohen, the President Trump's longtime fixer, and had even made some noise at a certain point. He became such a hero of the left. He had made some noise about potentially running for president himself. It's obviously been a rather precipitous fall, and I think that the charges unveiled today will likely preclude him from being a part of the public debate in a way that certainly garnered as much attention as he was able to garner previously, which incidentally is part of the charges here, that he threatened Nike to reveal incriminating information about alleged payoffs to student athletes, which would have been illegal, unless they essentially paid him off. And he said he would use his media platform, which of course he had proven so effective at doing in the case of Stormy Daniels and the alleged payoffs from Donald Trump, or the payoffs from Donald Trump over an alleged affair. Nike instead turned around and appears to have provided a great deal of information to the authorities, who then brought this indictment against Michael Avenatti.
All right, I'll leave it there. Thanks, Ken. That's the New York Times. Kenneth Vogel in Washington. Thanks for making time for us on what is another very busy day. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.